Hey there, welcome to SharkCast Pod, a podcast dedicated to the greatest sporting club in the history of the world, the mighty Cronulla Sharks. This show is brought to you by Dyson Logistics, the Royal Mighty Yacht Club in Port Hacking, and Jason Hawes at Cripps & Cripps Real Estate. My name is Sam Shinazzi, OG 2015, long-time supporter. Previous to that and podcasting for our 11th year, you can get us on all the places you would normally get a podcast. Your Apples, your Spotifys, any podcast app. We're on the YouTube. We'd love a subscribe, follow. We're on, I think, most of the social medias, even the evil ones. And the best thing about my morning, aside from my first coffee onto the second coffee, is catching up with my friend Kieran. And this is going to be a bit of a mix-up, mash-up of our shows. This is catching up with Kieran over coffee into the flagship show because it is, well, we are midweek now. So we apologize we didn't get a Monday episode to you, but that's just how it went down. Kieran Fraser, I got to say, for the first time in a long time at Shark Park, you and I were not situated together. It broke my heart. But you had a very good reason, and I would love for you to tell everyone why and also your experience, please, when you were at the Sharks 27-12 win over South Sydney.
I think that's the first game in over 2 years that we haven't sat together. So yeah, it was weird. I was on the hill. I was traveling last week and I was over in New Zealand and I was actually like every day listening to a new episode of SharkCast. Like I couldn't believe all the content you guys were pumping out. So that was great for me being on the run and being on the travel, to be able to stay connected to what was actually happening at the club. But on Thursday, my daughter kind of reached out, my eldest, who's 5 years old, and said that she wanted to go to the Sharks game. And I think some of her friends were going, and she'd never been to a game before. So, yeah, I took her to her first ever game at Shark Park. We sat up on the hill. We got there, in hindsight, a little bit too early for a 5-year-old who doesn't really have any interest in watching the football. She kept asking, when are they going to start dancing? So we watched the second half of the Jets game, and I think by then she was ready to kind of get out of there. But we held on. We made it to about 10 minutes before full time, and that second half was a bit drab that I'm sure we will get into. So I sort of said, all right, let's get out of here. Let's pull the pin. But in terms of a game day experience with a young child, it was, again, something that I'd never kind of wrap my head around because I've always just gone to football with my friends and things like that. So I never really considered what actually goes into the logistics. And, I'm a man and my daughter is a female. So, like, you taking her to the toilets, right? Like, that was a little bit of a unique situation for me. But, I did find the women's toilets that I did use for her because, again, it was like little portaloos and they were actually super clean. So I was really thankful for that. Because a little bit worried. I've heard the stories. I've read the letters that get written into here around the facilities and toilets. So when my daughter said she had to go to the toilet, I asked her like 4 times, do you really need to go? But she loved it. She danced a little hard out up on the hill. We got some great photos. The photos definitely make it look like it was a lot less stress-free compared to the actual reality of going to the football with a 5-year-old and her friends.
Yeah.
But great to do. Great to tick off the box. I did cry a little bit during the New South Wales Cup game because it was kind of that surreal moment where I was sitting there with her and she was in her Sharkies jersey. Memories for me when I was younger, when my grandpa used to take me to games. So yeah, it was unreal, mate.
Awesome. Hey, Kieran, I'm going to get you to lose those headphones because you're going in and about, and just do it like you were doing before. Check your settings for us, and it'll be fine. Just go without. You'll be fine. Just make sure you're all good there from that end. I saw your photos, and I got a bit emotional too because not only, my love for you and your family, but also took me back a couple of years to when Chester came to his first game. He's only been to a handful, but it is a lot of our listeners have gone through this very beautiful experience, or as you said, when another family member takes you to games, it's that kind of memory as well. So you had a pretty good leave pass from my end, as disappointing, not disappointing, as much of a change I had to go through on the weekend, not be with you. It was beautiful. And were you with Dave and his kids? Is that right?
Yeah, I was with Dave. It was funny. So we had to do a couple of different things, right? Where, one of us would go to the canteen and take the kids, right? So poor Dave, he left at halftime, and I think he got a request for 5 chips on the sticks from the kids. He was gone all of halftime, and he made it back with 25 minutes to go in the second half. So
he's one of the lucky ones.
Dave. I don't think he got to watch much of that second half, which was diabolical anyway.
All right. So Sharks win 27-12. We are in 6th place and rising, I might add. Fantastic first half. We both had good sight lines for what went on in the first half. Some of those crazy, unbelievable tries that we scored, particularly the Iro and the Kennedy tries, just sensational. What was the vibe like on the hill? Was it party time up there?
Well, I think because the first try was scored after, 3 minutes or so, it was kind of like surreal. And, I was talking to some Souths fans that I'm friends with that didn't make the game that were sending me texts saying this is going to be a long day at the office for us. But I kind of wasn't expecting that. I thought Souths would be a little bit more of a fight than what they actually gave us. But the hill was absolutely rocking and having all those tries in front of us. And I think even when a couple of those things happened, there was a few moments where the players even looked up like, how did that actually happen? Like when Iro makes that break, he goes to throw a dummy. Then he looks up and sees that there's no fullback there. And he floors it. And even when Nico scores in the corner, he kind of got up like, how did that happen? Like, it was a bit of a weird day at the football. The one that really puzzled me was in the second half where their winger, the new fella, what's his name again? Raviala? Yeah, he was 2 meters behind the goal line when Trindle scores. Like, it was a bizarro game.
that is trending around the world, that play.
Yeah, he was in reverse. Like, the Sharks made things look so easy, and I think that maybe bit us a little bit in the second half because when you're just going 100 meters and scoring tries like that looks so effortless, it does kind of mess with the feeling in the head, right? But no, that was my first time sitting on the family hill ever, actually. So it was a booze-free experience, and it was actually quite nice. It was very family-oriented. I was impressed.
Oh, good. Excellent. Yeah, I mean, those tries, I mean, they're highlight reels for years to come, decades to come. And the ease in which they did it, you're right. Like, I mean, I said all last week, I think it's going to be a close game, and I got razzed a bit for it. And I think there's a bit of razzing coming up for me, but that's what I believed. Wayne Bennett, they were 2-0. I'll tell you straight off, one of the things we did amazingly well, and we hinted during the week that we were a little bit worried about it, but we also had great faith in what they were going to do. And that was they kept Jai Gray to 61 meters. Now, this guy's used to making kind of 20-meter runs a pop. 61 meters, that kick chase, as soon as he got that ball, Britton was there, Teague was there, the centers were there. Like, they absolutely pumped him. That was where they won the game because they weren't getting the role that we get every time we start a set of 6. And that was brilliant playing and coaching and planning. And the kicking was spot on. Obviously, there was some 40-20s. There was both halves had really good kicking games. But I thought that's where it started and ended with the containment of Jai Gray.
Yeah, and I think one of the impressive things for me was it looked like there was a real style that they wanted to play, right? And they identified that South had a new winger in there. And, when we played Penrith, we kept saying, why aren't they going at this new combination with like Laurie standing on the wing with Gardner in the centers? Because when we did go there, we had success. Like, to the point where Stone Street gets the ball and then flings a wild pass across field because that was the plan. The plan was to attack a certain corridor and to get to a certain place in the field, right? And, I was mentioning to you off air that I was looking at some of the stats on the weekend. We made their young rookie hooker make 63 tackles, I think NRL.com says, right? And, Humphreys, who's been super impressive for South, he did play a little bit of lock, so it did kind of skew his numbers, but he made 45 tackles. So for us to go after some of their inexperienced players like that, it showed a real level of calmness that I was very impressed with because, we've talked about this last couple of weeks, all the travel and all that type of stuff. And, if you were to kind of get that hangover, it was probably going to be against South, right? Because again, you've done the 2 big trips. You had everyone was sick last week and, coming back from North Queensland in that humidity and all that type of stuff. So for them to come back to Shark Park and just be super professional and, they looked a different species to South, and South were undefeated going into that game. And I think the Bulldogs are the only undefeated team left too, right? So it's another good test for us this week.
Yeah, that is interesting about the Vegas hangover because I'm wondering, like, I think it'll hit at some point. I don't think it'll be major now, but I think at some point they'll all be like, oh, we're so tired. Like, hopefully it's not this week.
After the Manly game.
Yeah, because there's a lot of travel to Perth. That's right. But the other thing, Kieran, is like, I mean, if we don't see it this week, and obviously we hope to God we don't, the conditions at Shark Park were very, 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 very warm, right?
Yeah.
And you know, the fans were just standing around in it. These guys were playing in it. I thought maybe the second half contributed a little bit to that. The heat and they were so up in the first half, but that heat was brutal.
Oh.
If we don't see it soon, the hangover, it's not coming, and Clinton Maynard can sleep easier at night because they've done really well, man. They've done so well given what they went through with the whole traveling to Vegas. And yes, they went business, first class, whatever, but just the, you know, you and I and hundreds of listeners did it, like just the impact you put your body through. They've done really well.
Yeah, and it was a really hot day at Shark Park. I mean, I got sunburnt. My daughter got sunburnt. I got in trouble when I got home from the wife about that. But again,
that's not good.
Yeah, it didn't look like it was going to be a sunburn type of day in the morning. It was very overcast. It was cold. I even bought my daughter a Sharks jumper because I was that scared on the day that it was going to be cold. And the sun came out of nowhere. So this week will be a really good test because now it's 2 weeks at home, right? And we don't have the travel, we don't have the disruptions, we get back into our routine. So I've kind of been looking at this game as the kind of test to see where we're at. Because again, the Bulldogs are super confident, full of life. But yeah, I mean, they're flying high, you know. So for us, I think it's going to be a really good opportunity to see where we're at. But again, just having that stability of being at home for 2 weeks and, you know, no sickness in the camp is going to be huge.
Absolutely. And I think that's where the advantage comes this week is that we have had a second week at home to chill and get back into your routine. So, yeah, just looking at some of the stats from the game, Kieran, the possession fell away a little bit. We were 34 of 44, so 77%. But the first half, immaculate. I think there were no errors until maybe the 15th minute, which was that forward pass from Ronnie, which actually was going to lead to the first of what would be 3 spectacular tries, in theory, if they'd scored that one. And that was something that the coach brought up in the presser afterwards. They said something about Ronaldo and how cheeky he was with everything he did. And the coach said, well, he tried to do it with that forward pass because it was on. And, you know, whether you thought it was forward or not, I'm not sure. But if that ball sticks, that's the first of what would be 3 long-range tries. I also want to point out, and we'll get to the players and everything in a little bit, but that pickup from Ronaldo, the first thing I thought was, why are you picking the ball up with one hand? What are you doing in your own in goal? Oh, you're going to fight to get out? Okay, don't drop the ball. Just die with it. We'll go from here. No, it's on. So full credit to that guy. He's having a great year, but that was pretty amazing. That was the first error we made. 6 line breaks to 3. Almost triple the offloads, which is fantastic. And yeah, like in meters, we just killed them, like 800 more meters. We only made 21 missed tackles, and they had a lot of possession in the second half, so that was pretty good. And yeah, obviously all the stats kind of went our way. But for me, when I look at possession and completion rate, pretty good overall. And when I look at missed tackles, especially 21 missed tackles. And if I just do something really quick for you now with my tech, I look at where the Sharks stand as far as completions rate go. And we know that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win the comp. We've had teams come 15th with the best completion. However, Sharks still sit in 4th with 81% on average. So if you're completing at 80 plus, you're going pretty good. Warriors are best with 83. So that's awesome. And when I look at missed tackles, we've missed the least tackles in the NRL. We're averaging 21, which was on the weekend. So that's incredible, right?
I mean, it's a huge defensive effort. And again, I think if we can control the ball with the size that we have in our team and coming off our bench, if we're completing at 84%, we're going to be in most games up to our eyeballs, right? Especially if our halves are combining the way they're doing and kicking the way they're kicking. But with our size, if we hold 80% of the ball that we get, we're going to be in a really good position.
I wasn't going to do this, but let's just do this in a timely manner. Let's go through the team that played on the weekend, how we thought they went, where they're at. Will Kennedy, I thought he had another bumper game. As I said in the review, his stats are not lights out like they have been. But if you watch that game, you know he was involved in a lot of those tries. Where are you at on the Kennedy saga?
I feel like I went through like 8 hours of therapy listening to SharkCast last week. I read all the Kennedy questions.
Yeah.
But again, because I was spending a lot of time on planes last week, a lot of time in airports. I was listening to a lot of rugby league content, right? And I did listen to the Willie Mason podcast, and surprisingly, really good insights around how we break the game down, and they do waffle on a lot, but they break things down really technically as well. And some of the stuff they were talking about Kennedy is they're absolutely flabbergasted that anybody could be upset with Kennedy. And they're going through like their mailbag, which is similar to yours, and it's people kind of talking about how they've changed their stance on Kennedy. And I've been an open guy on this podcast saying that if we are to improve our spine, it will have to come from the fullback position because everything else is locked in with Brayley, Hines, and Trindle. Yeah. Where could we get it? And I was of the view that maybe we could move Daniel Atkinson there. I thought he has all the makings of a really good fullback with the ball playing, kicking game. I thought he's got the speed, that style of running. I thought he could be a really good fullback for us. But Kennedy is really knuckled down. And again, for him to skip out on that play from Stone Street, where Stone Street gets in the ball in the middle of the field, Kennedy
not a great pass.
Not a great pass, down around his ankles. But for Kennedy to get that quickly, to regather that, and then to get on the outside of his man and then set up the play on the outside was really special. And Kennedy's, he's really turned it around this year. He's sitting at the top of the Dally M stuff for whatever that's worth. But that's a reflection on the fact that he's been one of our better players week in and week out. And while he's doing that, there's not much more that we can ask of him, right? It would be great to have a Pappenhausen or to have, someone like that. But, the idea that he's, ranked 20th or whatever of all the fullbacks that are in the league, I just can't agree with that because, again, if he is the worst fullback in the league, which I personally do not agree with, I think he's definitely better than Connor Tracy, who we're going up against this week, and we've made that decision as a club to go with Will over Connor. Yeah. I definitely think that he's putting in, and it's going to be interesting to see how his management plays this because from our perspective, a 1-year deal sounds the best for everybody. But if you're Will Kennedy, you're probably sitting there going, I at least deserve 2, right? So it's going to be a really interesting situation. Ison's obviously signed on for another 2 years recently. It's going to be interesting, but you can't move on from him. You can't drop him because his performance right now is consistently one of our best. He got another 3 points, did he, on the weekend? I think Trindle got 6 and Will got 3. So, he's still adding points every week.
It's going to be super interesting because if he keeps playing like this or better, then I don't see how you don't re-sign him. And then I don't see how it won't be for the same money or a tiny bit more. But as I said to Josh, and he kind of not shot it down, he said that Shinaz, most other teams have guys locked up at fullback. But I was thinking, well, what if someone comes in and goes, hey, Will, come over to my club for $100,000 more? And then we're not screwed, but it's like we need to find someone of his caliber for the same amount of money he's on. So I'm not suggesting it's going to happen, but it's entirely possible. We've seen crazy stuff already this week in the NRL, so it's entirely possible.
Dude, can I pose a question to you, Sam? We will win a lot of games this season if everything goes to plan, right?
Yes.
The Sharks should be a top 4 team.
Yes.
Will has jumped out to a decent score on the Dally M charts right now.
Yes.
If we consistently win, like what is there, 20 games left? If we win 17 of those games, if we win 16 or whatever the number is, and Will keeps banking those points. Now, this is so far-fetched, and I don't want to see message board posts about how crazy it is. But there is a world where he could consistently score points in our top 2-3 players every week and get Dally M fullback of the year, if not bank up enough points to be in the conversation for Dally M if we win enough games. Because, again, his performance has been quite strong. Could you imagine that world? And I know that sounds crazy, but if you'd said in February or March 2001 that Preston Campbell was going to come in and be our halfback and win the Dally M over Joey Johns that year, everyone would have said, you're crazy, blah, blah, blah. But what I'm saying here is not that I think Will Kennedy's going to win Dally M or be the best fullback. But there's a world where he could bank up enough points to be in that conversation based on the overall strength of our squad, and if he's in one of our better players. And we're still looking to potentially move on from that based off what some of the fans want, which is it's a really unique position to be in. Yes, we could do better. We could get a better fullback, but we could also have a worse fullback and really mess with the chemistry too.
And at what point in all of that scenario, and it's just a scenario, is the contract being waived in front of him, and is he signing? Not like, because that gets really hairy. And I'm of the belief that he'll resign. Like he's a pretty humble dude, loves where he is. I think aside from the fan base, some of the fan base, he gets a lot of respect within the club, whether you see that or not. But I don't know. I was around some journos yesterday, and they weren't Shark obsessed journos, and they were asking the question like, "Oh, is Will off contract? Why is he off contract? Like, what's going on there?" And there was no answer, and I just sort of went, "Oh, he's going pretty good. I think he'll get a contract somewhere," So anyway, let's move on. Sam Stonestreet, I thought, had an improved game. I think that it is 2 step forward, 1 step back with him. He's a young fella. You can hear him on the episode yesterday. We talked to him for the first time, and a really impressive guy to talk to. Very humble. No, he knows his place, knows his role. But I thought he was better yet again.
The one thing I did notice was South execution was not where it needed to be. And because we got off onto that really good start, we had them chasing points early. They did find a bit of space on the outside of our wingers, not just on Sam, but there was a few times where the ball was thrown out there and the winger wasn't in the right position, or the ball was dropped and things like that. So if South's execution was a little bit better, potentially that could have really made a big difference, because they did expose a little bit of space on our edges. But again, that is the game plan that we're rolling with. And as long as the center and winger and, the half are in communication and everyone's on the same page, you're not going to get a situation where I saw Chad Townsend broke down the Nico try and tagged SharkCast on, I think it was yesterday or the day before, where the center and the winger were not in communication, where the center went in, the winger stayed out. As long as those two guys are on the same page, I don't think it's going to be an issue. But I thought Sam had a respectable game. 9 games into Sam's career, we're expecting Sam to be like a Katoa-like player.
Yes.
And we forget like what Katoa was like after 9 games.
Yep, absolutely. It's the NRL in 2025. You got to be Clive Churchill or get the hell out of here. And it's a harsh world. Sometimes I forget that. I'm trying really hard not to, and I think I'm getting better at that. And I'm not suggesting other people need to do that, but it might help their reality checks, because they're not all going to be Clive Churchills, let alone after 9 games. But he's going pretty good. I thought the centers were great. Ramian is very stable. Let me focus on Iro for you. He scored a try. He ran for 243 meters, including 44 posts. He made 5 tackle busts and made 20 tackles. And obviously 2 of those were very long runs, but just going sensationally.
And I think he's kind of broken the mold for us, because he did come in really last year. He played one game in 2022, was it, or 2023? No, it was 2022, and then 2023 was in reserves. But he's came in, he looks like a legitimate first grader, and he doesn't play like a guy that's played 20, 30 games, right? So Iro, I'm really excited for, but then I'm starting to also, now the paranoid Sharks fan in me, is I'm looking at our contract list and go, well, come November 1st, Kale can talk to other clubs. So this is a lot of moving pieces here. I think his value is skyrocketing every single week that he plays for us. He's got utility. He can play a number of positions for us. I wouldn't be surprised if something did happen to Will and, Ison's gone, that we maybe look at Kale at fullback as well. So there's a lot of different parts that he can play for us. But, mate,
I'm moving heaven and earth for Kale Iro. I can tell you right now. That's how impressed I am with him.
I totally agree.
It's legit. He's legit. You've seen him at a really strong level. There's no horror show there. Like, I don't know if you'll ever see him, touch wood, play a 5 out of 10 game. He's 7.5 and above. He's just so reliable. He's kind of like with respect, a calmer version of Jesse Ramian. And that's, again, after 20 games or whatever. So, again, he's super young in his career, but I love everything about this guy.
He just turned 25 as well, right? So the real peak
Right.
of his career is ahead of him. And again, it goes back to how Fitzy develops players. He easily could have been out of the club in 23 and maybe bounced around and found himself in Super League. Like, he had some offers to go over there. But now he's a career first grader, and he'll be playing NRL for the next 7-8 years, hopefully the Sharks.
Mulatalo, again, one glitch in Vegas, but having a really great year. And I love the fact that he's already signed on, he's locked in, and his attitude's great, and it's great off the field. He bounces around the place. He inspires people, and he's a bit of a pest sometimes, but he's just he's a great human. But aside from all that, a really good footballer. The creativity in this back five, dude, is off the charts. Will Kennedy, I'm noticing his hands more and more. There was a play last week against who we played last week?
Cowboys.
Where Stone Street was the one where he was run down, one of the rundowns, and Will Kennedy from the kick, he got the ball, ran, and the way he passes the ball last minute draws in a couple of guys. And Mulatalo does the same thing. They're phenomenal at drawing their man and even other men around them. Just fantastic. The halves obviously had a strong game. I was super psyched for Nico Hines. You can see from that try, he was on. And his mate was really great too. And we spoke to him yesterday on the show. You can go listen to that. But 240-20s from Trindle. He kicked for about 100 meters more, probably in those 40-20s. But they both set up tries. They both scored tries. Nico kicked pretty good, some difficult shots there. And generally just steered us around so well. The kicking game was awesome.
Well, yeah, I've always struggled with how do they best look together. And Fitz talks about all the time that they haven't played a lot of football together, right? But then also, too, if you look at it, it's the fullback aspect of things too, right? And I think that's enabled Will to become even more settled in his role and for doing what he actually is, being put in the team to do, right? And some of the attacking plays that we do with our shapes are looking really good with both our halves firing and looking as great as they can. But it's also making Will look better too. So I think the most impressive thing from the halves that I saw on the weekend was that they both kind of knew their role. And Trindle scores that try in the corner, which, gets a lot of the raps and the 40-20 that he kicked. But the play before that was Nico jumping out, I think, of dummy half or off the ruck, and then hitting Ronnie for that break to occur, right? So again, It's not as if Nico was sitting there watching Tricky, do these trick shots. Nico might have had 1 or 2 try assists bombed as well, like the pass for Stone Street where Stoney couldn't get the ball down, things like that too. So there was a couple of errors there that weren't from the halves that would have made those stats that they put up even more impressive. But I want to ask you a question. How excited were you when Tricky kicked that second 40-20? Like, how many times as a Sharks fan have we kicked 2 in a game?
Yeah, I don't know if we have. We were looking up some of the stats at work, and it happens every now and then, more than you think, but not often, obviously. Like, one's hard enough, but 2, I guess, I asked him, he just said he saw it and there was a bit of wind, but he's playing with that confidence where you can do that. And we saw him almost pull off a very important one in the prelim last year. If he gets that one, maybe things are a little bit different. I don't know. I'm speculating, obviously, but couldn't have hurt. But he's becoming a very confident player, Trindle, and he's being talked about this week in other circles, in other arenas of the game. And, we don't need to go there right now. But one of the questions I posed to him was, how are you handling all the acclaim? And he was just like, we're good. I'm just hanging out with my mates and playing footy. So pretty mature head on some young shoulders. I want to talk about Blake Brayley briefly. His stats this year are not what they were last year, but the team's winning. And I'm starting to see a very slick Blake Brayley. His delivery is unbelievable, but his choices this year of where he's going, He seems a lot more confident, a lot more vocal, a lot more direct. I think he's being ordered around a bit less. I think he's calling some of the shots, which is fantastic. And I own Blake Brayley Island, but I also think that, bias aside, he's having a really good year.
So I'm just looking at his stats now. He's 26 years old at the moment. And he's played 140 first grade games. Now, majority of those have been as a starter. I know there was some stuff with Jaden early on in his career. But he's been a staple of our side now since 2019. It's now 2025. Like, it doesn't feel like that. It kind of still feels like we're waiting for Blake to kind of take off. But this year, I've sort of noticed a bit more of a swagger to him and a confidence where I think over the years we've seen it building. I think he's won our players player the last 2 years, right?
So the swagger started probably halfway through last year, but it's definitely another level this year. And when you got Fanua Blake next to you, why wouldn't you?
Well, and there was some stuff I was listening to around what Fanua Blake does to our attack. But basically, what that gives Blake is, one, the quick play the balls from Fanua Blake, which are unbelievable. And I think Blake's been unlucky to not get a few 6 agains because he's taken off a few times, looked at the markers who was standing next to the play the ball.
Definitely.
Looking at the rep going, what's going on here? And we haven't got that call. But from an attacking standpoint, it also allows our defense and our edges, because we have these crazy wingers and centers and back rowers that run 100 miles an hour and go like missiles. But then you've also got Fanua Blake, who takes up a lot of space. And for that first Nico try, that was a Fanua Blake hitter, and there was 5 guys from South underneath the goalpost and around the goalpost because Fanua Blake was there, which allows Blake then to get out, dip it out wide, and the whole attack flows so much better. So, I'm telling you now, I don't like the state of origin buzz. We're seeing it with Tricky and all that type of stuff. If the Cowboys keep doing what the Cowboys are doing, Robson's going to get a little bit more pressure. There will be noise if we keep winning. Look at Blake Brayley. It's going to be interesting to see how that all goes. But, I'm loving confident Blake.
Yeah, for sure. The back row was awesome. Teague was just crushing blokes in defense. The Nicara try was a thing of beauty. Like, we and everyone talks about the lines that he runs. That was one of the great lines that he ran right in front of you, probably. And back row just doing what they do. One of the more stable back rows in the NRL. I thought Dan Atkinson was a bit more effective this week, yet again off the bench. I'm not suggesting that I would necessarily keep him there as a middle forward, and I know he's there for other reasons, but I thought he was okay, and he played a bit more at hooker when Blake went off a bit early, both from the fact the game was won. He had a minor cork issue, which is not a problem. We saw Talakai make some really good meters. In fact, the 3 other guys on the bench had really good stints: Talakai, Hamlin-Welly, and Tukuhai Tapua. Talakai is 50-50 this week, Kieran. He's named, obviously, and there is a thought that he'll play. It's nowhere near confirmed, but there's a thought that he'll play. So that's great news. Unfortunately for Hamlin-Welly, the news is not as good. It's not as severe as what everyone thought, but I think he'll be out for some time with a knee injury. No operation at this stage, so that's positive. I thought Hamlin-Welly had his best game in a long time, and I was super bummed when I saw what was going on. You could see it in his face, and obviously holding his knee. But he played 24 minutes, ran for 100 meters, made 8 tackles, no misses, busted some tackles, and he was back to his old self, I thought.
It was definitely the best I'd seen him look in a long time on the field. And it kind of felt like, because at that point we had kind of asserted dominance and we were up by 20 points, it felt like we were kind of going to leave Sipper and Hamlin-Welly out there a little bit longer and get some more minutes into their legs, because they were both being more involved, and it seemed to flow better with those guys. Because again, I think if we can work out our bench, we can really do some damage in this competition. But to see him go down, to see the look on his face, as soon as it happened, he knew it was something that wasn't going to be a good situation. So that was very heartbreaking for me. I probably wouldn't rush Sipper back this week if he's 50-50. I just don't think it's worth the risk. We saw Sipper in the past carry injuries. I think it was the 2023 finals where he was literally limping into the games. And I think for what we want to do, Sifra is so important that we just can't take any risks with him. And, there's a few guys back on that extended bench. So, I think we've got a bit of the troops back this week. And I did laugh when I saw that, Fox Sports was saying we had a middles crisis. I'll go, we've got a lot of front rowers. It's like the one position where we have a lot of players. And they were talking about Lachlan Crouch, who's a real up-and-comer for the Sharks. But I was like, I don't think we're quite at that stage yet. But, hopefully we get Hamlin back fit. But it's a handy time to have Toby back if Toby's ready to go.
Yeah, not sure if he'll play this week, but he's named on the extended bench. And Big Tuku was great. He ran for 100 meters. So he averaged 10 meters a run, which is tops. He made 8 tackles, no misses. And he had one error straight up. But, I mean, you could see what he was trying to do. And it's one error. It didn't really matter. I've got no issue with that. He's not an error machine. And I really like him being out there, man. I think that if he can be the guy that plays the 20 minutes to get the experience every week, it's going to be so beneficial for him and the club moving forward. I think he's just becoming a really solid player. He's kind of in that Oregon Kafusi kind of won't let you down solid, but he's got the more spectacular style because of his body, I guess. And I think there's a lot of room there for him to become more dominant. But I think they're taking it easy and saying, rip in, but make your tackles and, don't make the errors. And yeah, I really like him being there. And he's young too. For a prop, he's young.
Yeah, and he's under a great learning tree there with Penua Blake. And you see a lot of the Tongan fellas after the game, all super connected, super close to each other, getting photos together and all that type of stuff. So, I'm really happy with the leadership that we've got at the club. And I think it's going to do wonders for a guy like Tooks to get him to the level that he should be at. Because, a couple of years ago when he came to the Sharks, I don't think he played first grade his first year. We re-signed him. There were people questioning, well, if this guy didn't play first grade this year, why are we bothering keeping him? But this is a guy that Fitzy has been with now for a number of years at the Roosters, now at the Sharks. And Fitzy doesn't just go out and buy random players. I think, since he's been here, the first grade squad has only added a handful of outside players, right?
Yeah.
So for Tooks to be one of them, I think it speaks volume for what Fitzy sees in him. And again, I love the slow development and let's get these guys right, because when you do it right, you get a guy like Iro who you just push into your system and looks like a constant first grader. Queensland did this so well in Origin for years, where they would just drip these guys off the bench like a DCE or a Ben Hunt. And then when Cooper Cronk or Thurston goes, you've got the next guy ready, right? So, I'm not saying that Tooks will become an immortal, but I do like the theory of giving them game time, getting them ready, slowly doing it versus throwing them out into the wolves.
And he's the sort of character, from what I can tell, he's not going to antsy or arc up because he's not getting enough time and enough games. And, as long as his management and etc. don't get in his ear about that, I think he's the sort of guy that's okay to sit back and chill. Like, he understands. And there's no guarantees, but there's probably, the notion that at some point it'll be his time. It's just not now. And I think he seems okay with that. And, the last thing you need is some club to come in, bells, whistles, and checkbook going, hey, come here and we'll throw you in straight away, because that can be very enticing. But under Fitzgibbon, under Penua Blake, and all the guys that he's with, I think that, he's locked up anyway, but I think there's a big future there for this guy.
The fact that we re-signed him so quickly before Hazelton and some of those other guys were done, one, it's, he's probably on an easier deal for us to work out dollars and cents wise. But two, I think it shows that, one, he wants to be here, and two, the club has a huge hope for him too. So I look at that, and, you hear coaches often talk about sizes in packs and how you have to have different body shapes. We have so many now huge humans, but we also have thick humans like a Siffer as well, right? So the balance there is absolutely perfect. So I'm super stoked that we've kept him for another year. And part of me does want to see a game where him and Hazelton start, the front row, and we just have these two, WWE wrestlers as our front rowers, because it'd be cool to see.
Absolutely. So Sharks win 27-12. Cheeky field goal at the end. How'd that make you feel, the old field goal?
I liked it, and I also liked the fact that we still were trying to score tries right up until the end, and it wasn't until literally like 1 or 2 seconds left when they just kicked it with such ease too. So again, I would have probably liked to have seen it be a little bit more planned out and thought, because you do get those situations where you do need to get that field goal to win the game. Whereas that was just kind of like, all right, the whistle's blowing, just kick a field goal, right? So it would have been good to see a little bit more planning for that, but can't argue with the result.
All right, we'll put a wrap on that game right now. Kieran, we want to tell you about the RMYC at Port Hacking, and they have an amazing restaurant which you and I have dined in called The Galley. I say restaurant, there is a restaurant part to it. You can also eat in different parts of the club, but it is a fantastic place. Great club. They have helped us out a lot over the years, and we like to think we've helped them out as well. Get in touch with them, 9523-9300. Their website is rmycph.com.au. They've got a membership app, and it's a lovely place in the world. Our good friend Ben Ross is one of their neighbors, and it is the place to go. If you want to watch a game, you can just go for a drink. Doesn't have to be at the great restaurant, The Galley. It can be. It doesn't have to be. They'd appreciate any of your hanging out there. Great place to watch the footy. So get in touch with them. Go visit them. Tell them we sent you RMY, the Royal Motor Yacht Club in Port Hacking. It's a mouthful sometimes, but it's a wonderful, delicious mouthful. And we love those guys and girls down there. Kieran, the Jets are going really well. They won 40-10 over Souths. It was one of the 2 games before the NRL game on Saturday. It was also streamed for the entire world to watch, or streamed, broadcast. And it was a great insight into what's going on down there. They're looking really good this year. It would not surprise me if they go premiership again. They're 3-0 and a bunch of stars all round. I'll tell you who really impressed me, and I've come around to him a lot, is Jaden Berrell. He's very reliable, very consistent. If Blake Brayley ever chose not to play a game for us, at this point in my time, I'd have no problem with Berrell just stepping in. I think he would be the guy to go in straight away. I really like what he does. He's the ultimate professional. And there were a bunch of really impressive guys. The Puru brothers continue to really do it for me. I think Nephi's really improved over the few years he's been with us. And this year he's going really well. You can see he's a lot more confident. There's stars all over the place in that grade. Mawina Karate is a standout as well at fullback, and Michael Gabriel, one of the younger guys, looks sensational. There's a whole bunch of them. Did you get to see any of this game at all?
I did. I was there for a little bit of it. There was probably peak chaos as we were getting there, getting set up, having lunch boxes and things like that.
Yeah.
But with the Jets, I love the centers. Like, I love Vela and I love Gabriel. And I just wonder, moving forward, how we can try and integrate some of those guys into the team, because we are such a set team. And we've seen it with Stone Street. Like, you don't get an opportunity unless somebody is injured. And, Katoa or Ronnie, for the most part, have been pretty stable in their availability, right? And it's going to be hard for some of these guys to make this team. But when you've got depth there that we have, like a guy like Jaden Berrell, to have a guy who's like, almost 30 years old, but has all that wealth of experience. He doesn't panic. You can throw him into any situation. It's not going to phase him. He's talked in the past about how he was working full time and training, doing Queensland Cup and all this type of stuff, right? Like, he's not going to be phased if we have to call on him for that opportunity, right? So I like the mix of experience that we have in there with the Hirottis, the Berrells, the Billy Burnses, but then also the young, exciting talent like Vela, Gabriel, Pollard even playing as well. So I love the setup that they've got down there. And again, it just speaks volumes to how deep this club is becoming, because, there's not many clubs that can be successful at the different levels. And, we've got a deep roster at this club. So well done to Mooney. We should get him a Christmas card.
We can do that. We'll get him a Christmas card. The thing about that, Kieran, is you need to strike at some point big time. You need to go to the big dance, first time mentioned this year, and you need to win it at some point when you have that depth. And we did that once in the past when we had that depth over a couple of years. And that's what we're obviously striving for this year, next year, year after, because we won't hang on to the majority of these guys for the majority of that period of time. You know, you might hang on to a Hiroti, you might hang on to a Beryl because they know what they've got. They like it. Beryl doesn't have to go do construction during the day, etc. And they're on a good wicket. I think Billy Burns is in that category too, but they could all go somewhere else and be probably in the 17 somewhere. But when it comes to the younger guys who have this potential, not superstar necessarily status, but the potential to do more because they're so much younger, they could be drawn away by other clubs under the influence, like I was talking about before, of more or even some first grade experience. Because in this team this year, there's not going to be many guys breaking through. It's just how it is. And we're thankful for that, right? But that's where it gets interesting with Riley Pollard, because, you know, he's definitely got first grader written on him if everything trends the right way. How do you integrate that? Well, Nico's signed for another 5 years or whatever. Trindle's pretty young. But we believe in you. We want you to be our guy at some point. Please stick around. Here's some money. And they've done that. They've locked him up for a bit. But yeah, it's interesting. How do you integrate the cup guys and even the flag guys and keep them happy and stick around?
Well, I mentioned our two centers, and I really like both those centers. Now, Iro and Ramian are both off contract at the end of 2026, so both of them can talk to other clubs come November 1st. Now, Vela and I think Gabriel's got one more year on his contract. I think Gabriel goes to the end of 27, and so does I think Riley Pollard from memory. But, you know, Riley's going to be in a situation where, especially next year when Daniel Atkinson leaves, he will be the backup halfback for a team that is fighting for a top 4 spot. Now, in the past, you might not have sat there and kind of taken that opportunity and tried to go to a lesser team and try to become that week-to-week first grader. But I think what you're seeing with halves these days especially is they're willing to do that apprenticeship, because now a guy like Cherry Evans is 35 and he's looking to play until he's at like 37. Like, he's looking to do another 2 years. So, you know, halfbacks, you don't need to be playing first grade at 21, 22, because how many great halfbacks have we seen in the lower grades make it at that young age and then not kick on, not go to that next level? And then before you know it, they're playing in Super League, and then they might come back at 25, 26, but they're never quite the player that had the same buzz. Whereas a guy like Jonah Peasant at the Melbourne Storm is a great example of this. He's sitting back behind Munster and Hughes. Like, that's going to be impossible to crack that unless there is an injury. But he's been slowly drip-fed his experience and, you know, game time and all that type of stuff. And I think Riley's going to be in that situation. But when I look at things like the centers and I go, well, Jesse, I think, will be 28, 29 when he's off contract. Do they have to then start to look at those calls, which Jesse is one of my favorite players. Kale is 25. Jesse might be 28, 29 when that contract is up. Do we then put it all into this window and say to a guy like Jesse, and I hope we don't do this, this is just me thinking out loud, hey, Jesse, end of 2026 is going to be the last day. We're going to bring through a Gabriel, a Vela, or whoever it is, maybe a young guy from a different club who's not playing for us at the moment, but just to make the dollars and cents work, but also then to put the emphasis on, guys, this is the window. And we saw it last year with, you know, Royce Hunt leaving and Jack Williams leaving. Like, these were guys that were part of our setup for a really long time. But when Fitzy spoke about it to I think it was you, is this person, have they reached their max potential? Do they have more in them? Or are they consistent at this level, right? Yeah. And those are the discussions that are going on every day at Shark Park. So how they integrate these young fellas and manage this salary cap, because, again, we've only lost one player that we wanted to keep over the last couple of years, and that's Daniel Atkinson.
I mean, Jesse Ramian, you would have to think that it would take the aging process and a form reversal for that not to be 100%. Another re-signing. And it doesn't, you know, you'd say to him, well, you're going to be maybe on less money, which, unless he's like, I don't know, playing Origin every year or whatever up until that point, but you'd think it'd be maybe less of money, but stick around in the system you love, the people you love, da da da. And we're spitballing here, which is what
I
we
just picked
do.
Jesse because he was just a player off contract.
Yeah, no, it's a good point though. The other thing is you would need Viella or Gabriel to be going really, really well, and we're not suggesting they won't be. They're again trending pretty good, but that's how those decisions get made. Well, this guy's coming up, and we think he's the guy. This is our current guy. No, he's getting on a little bit. Maybe he can get more money for his family over there. But if he can't, if it's just the same, maybe we hang. Yeah, it's quite fascinating, man. The SG Ball team defeated Manly, which is always a great thing. And the Matthews Cup team lost 20 points to 10 to the same despicable team, Manly. In the women's competitions, they both won. The Lisa Fiola and Tasha Gale teams won. That was played on Saturday morning. So that is awesome. And we love supporting those lower grade teams. Kieran, let's do a little bit more spruiking of our friends. Now, I believe you caught up with this guy, or you met this gentleman, Jason Hawes from Crips and Crips Real Estate. You met him in Vegas, is that correct?
I did, and I've got to say, his beard is so impressive in person. I didn't realize he had a beard. I've been looking at the billboards all over the Shire, and I didn't recognize him at first. So there you go.
Yeah, it's one of those things you don't want to raise with your mates. It's like you look really good in that billboard, very professional. But now I'm seeing you down at Mr. Paisley's, and you look pretty badass here. You don't look the same.
The beard's
but maybe
awesome.
that's the vibe he's going for. Maybe
we're biased beard guys.
We are biased beard guys, but maybe billboard Jason Hawes is different to Paisley's Mr. Hawes. I know that he's loving us talking about this, but we do want to give him a shout out because he is absolute elite real estate agent in the Shire. He's been doing it for around almost 25 years, I believe, in the Shire. And we'd love you to give him a call on 0410 417 450 0410 417 450. Tell him we sent you. He is up for any kind of chat about real estate. You need advice, you need help, you want to do things with real estate, whatever it is, get in touch with Jason and he will give you some advice. He'll help you out. He'll talk to you. So great fella, big Sharks fan, huge Sharks fan. And he was at the SharkCast party in Las Vegas. And I think we pointed this out on the other show last week, Kieran, but there was a mecca of real estate agents at the party because we had Jason Hawes, we had my old soccer buddy, Justin Ressler, who is huge in the real estate industry especially in the Shire. And then we had just outside of the Shire, our good friend Fraser, who I think he deals in more. Do you know where it is? It's like
Peakhurst, Mortdale.
Yes, that's where he is. So for whatever reason, the real estate agents love the Sharks and love SharkCast. So at this point, we're just giving Jason Hawes a shout out. But of course, if Justin and Fraser want to talk to us about stuff, that's a whole other story. We're just kidding. We're not kidding. Please help feed our children. No. Kieran, let's get through some of the mail. And I am going to warn everyone that I haven't read it this week, or most of it. So you'll have to deal with that. But let's get into it. And we will start. I want to give a shout out to someone called Vineet. And Vineet runs what does he run? He runs a thing called Million Podcasts. And I think it's a website, and he rates podcasts. And he was giving all these accolades to our podcast, Kieran, and he ranked us in the top, very top of lists for NRL, for NRLW, for rugby. Like he was categorizing rugby sports all around the world, and he had us really high up. So thanks to Vineet, and we'll post some of that stuff when we get time. So appreciate that. Daniel says, what a great first half of football. I was not upset with the second half. I did expect the Wayne Bennett factor to apply there. I did think, though, we shut up shop, but that's still a very solid win. Full credit to Hines and Trindle, steered around the team. Kennedy was again outstanding. I think it's unfair to state his paycheck equals his efforts. He constantly puts in and would fit into a number of teams. I understand, though, the fullback is the new it position, and most of us do want a Walsh, Tedesco, or Turbo. Nevertheless, we can win a competition with Kennedy. We can win a competition with Kennedy. Nico is strong. Asks about the status of some players, which I think we've updated. He wants to know, where does Rudolph and Hazleton come into the team? Tuku's been great. I think he's done more than Hazleton, but 3 games in, it's a matter of opinion. Thanks. That's from Danny. So any thoughts there, Kieran, on where Rudolph and Hazleton fit in compared to the rest of the guys on that bench?
Well, it's going to be interesting when everybody is fit. So this week we kind of get a bit of a get-out-of-jail-free card with Hamlin-Ueli and potentially Sifa. But I mean, Toby should be fighting to be starting with Fanua Blake. I mean, Toby should not be settling to be a bench front rower for us. 1, with his pay packet, and 2, with, he's been kind of one of our leaders in that pack for a long time. So I think Toby gets back into the 17 pretty comfortably. But again, we're going to need to see something from Toby, because when, again, I talk about contracts, he can talk to other clubs from November 1st, as can Hamlin-Ueli. We've got a lot of middles signed on long term. We're going to need to see a lot out of those 2 guys, right? I think given the club's recent commitment with Hazleton, he's another guy that walks straight back into the 17. And I think, a guy like Tooks is probably going to get squeezed out back into that 19th man role. But again, I don't think that's an issue for his development. I think it's going to come down to, do we carry that extra utility on the bench, or do we go with 4 front rowers, 4 middles, really? And I still don't know how I feel about that. I think I need to see more of the season unfold before I land on that. But I will say most teams seem to be running with an Atkinson, right, on their bench. So potentially one of those middles is going to miss out, right? So if everybody's fit, what a great problem to have.
Adam says, I think Stone Street's been listening to the podcast. He tried to catch the ball old school style and dropped it. Do you think you had an influence? Just kidding, man. That's from Adam. I saw the drop ball. Was that from, okay, that was from a traditional way of catching it. Well, maybe you should go back the other way. I don't know. I don't think I've been influenced. I know you're just joking, and I'm just joking too. Thank you for being in touch, Adam. Stephen says, shout out for Will Kennedy for his massive efforts thus far. He's been our best, hands down, the first 3 weeks. I wanted to highlight something. In the second half, we did lose a lot of momentum, but it only started with that cork from Brayley. We lost a lot of ruck speed, followed by Sifa and Ueli getting injured. Once Atco came on, we lost our way in attack a little. I'm a glass half full. In the first half, we showed what we were capable of, early days, but as long as we keep building and learn to keep the foot on the throat, it will help elevate us to the level we need to be. So I like that. I think that we haven't talked about the injury to Brayley and what that meant. And of course, there were the other injuries as well. So that will slow you down a little bit. I don't think it's necessarily a complete reason why we were outscored in the second half, but I'm absolutely happy to put that in as a reason, or one of the reasons. And there was talk in the media about why didn't we go on with it, and what does this mean overall? I think it's too early to look into that kind of stuff, Kieran. I think that, we would have loved a massive scoreline, but at the end of the day, we won by a good margin. It was never in doubt ever, that game, once it was kickoff. And I'm not at this stage worried about that kind of stuff. I think if we let Souths back in, it's a different story. But one try was from a kick. The other try, I can't even remember, but they were not
penalty, and he took a quick tap.
Quick tap. Yeah. So it's not defensive efforts there falling away. So I'm really not worried about that stuff at the moment. And Stephen also wants to, and hopefully you're okay with this, give a shout out to Josh Bolling. He has great insights, and I agree with most of the thing he says. So there you go, Josh. You're getting a bit of love, which is great. Thank you, Stephen. This next one is from a good friend of ours, yours and mine, from Marky H. And Mark has given us a little bit of personal insight into his history and heritage, some of which is of Indigenous Aboriginal heritage. And he wanted to point out that our spine has 3 Indigenous players. And he thinks that what that means is a lot. It means a lot to the players themselves and what they bring as a group. He said he wasn't sure how many teams over the years had a spine with 3 Indigenous fellas. Also throw in Jesse Ramian as well. And he gives us a bit of insight into what that's like. He says you feel a very deep bond. It's instinctive. You can't help it. And when this instinct feel for a game goes on, you get to see them play like they did against South. He also said while the Jets were playing, Tricky and Nico sat together, which was right near him. He sits right near the dugout, so to speak. And he said they were just brothers talking, being near each other, just like they were in the game. He said, I was watching the game again on TV. It does look like Tricky was in control, but live and close up, I watched Nico conduct where each play was going and then let Tricky do his thing. 2 brothers playing for each other and the team. I loved every second of it. He then mentions after the game how South's Indigenous players and their kids were hanging out with our kids and with Jack Whiten and Cody. He said it's something special. He said he's not sure if he's expressed it well, but his one definition of it is unconditional love. And he said it also extends to the Islander fellas. And I think he's explained it really well. And he's not, I can already hear someone going, oh, what about this person or that person? Mark is not being like that. He's just pointing out something which is very true. Like there is a bond there between these guys that is quite special. And you can see it on the field. Like, I mean, even if they weren't playing lights out, it'd still be a special bond. But we're all for it, man. Thank you for being in touch, Mark. Hope you enjoyed the game. I saw you. He was on telly. Mark's on telly a lot when they go to the.
Yeah, he is such a legend. He offered me some seats for me and my daughter to go and sit up there with those guys because obviously the hill was a little bit packed and all that type of stuff too. So Mark's a legend. Much love for Mark, mate.
I didn't offer you tickets for you and your kid.
That dastardly Josh, right?
No, just lots of different reasons. No, that's.
I was always going on the hill. I was always going on the hill.
Shane says, in round 3, I'm not too fussed how we get the 2 points, especially on a warm day. I don't need to see finals type footy 3 weeks in. That's a pretty good shout, actually.
The second half too, mate, was really stop-start. And because I went and really looked at the second half because I was like, what happened there? Because, one, I had a 5-year-old there going feral. But 2, I was like, well, where did the point stop? And I looked at it, and I don't have the stats off the top of my head, but South dropped a lot of ball. South were not like kicking the ball out. Like there was a lot of penalties, a lot of stop starts, and like it was not conducive to a flowing game of football. But when you actually looked at when we had the ball, we were still making breaks, and South were maybe pulling us down a meter out from the line and all that type of stuff. Where we were still attacking, and we didn't shut up shop and just sort of let South back in the game. It was just one of those things where everybody was just waiting for it to be full time. Like, I don't know how long that second half went for, but mate, it felt like forever.
Shane also says a big shout out to Jamie Humphries' thighs for providing a bit of shade to those of us in the lower Pete Burns. Warm regards from Shane. Different Steve says, great performance overall. He says, number 1, in the Kennedy try, watch Nico from the kick. He basically gets... he basically gets from close to Stone Street to be there for one of the final passes. Great work. So yeah, so from where Stone Street was all the way up for that last pass to Kennedy.
Yeah, and if you watch that try, I think it was the one where Will scored. There was some Sharks players down like 10 meters behind the South Sydney players. And the South Sydney players just saw the break and they all just kind of walked back. The Sharks players were sprinting to be there in support. So when that ball hit the deck, there was 3 Sharks players there.
Yeah.
And then you could see the South players were going, oh no, we should have been there. So, full credit to the guys for fully like backing up the play and, actually being there, because they overtook South players to get there. And that's embarrassing if you're a South fan.
They're playing with a real bounce and a real energy. And one of the questions I'm dying to ask the coach is, how do we maintain that for 27 rounds? And he's going to say, well, you can't. But also, I just want to know, can we pick and choose when we do that? Because if we play like that against top tier teams, we're going to give it a real shake. Like, that's what you need. That's how you need to play. Like, if you play like that in the big games, you're all the way in it. And, you're not going to necessarily play with that razzle dazzle, but just that high energy, and especially in defense, like they were brutal in defense. So
gives them the confidence to throw the ball around, because they're thinking, well, if I throw the ball, 5 minutes out from my goal line, we'll still defend this and we don't care. So the fact Ronnie has that confidence to do that, it speaks volumes for where the Sharks think that they want to be, right? So Fitzy talks about earning the right all the time, and I think he was saying that in the presser, as they earned the right to throw the ball through their defense. And you definitely saw on the weekend, because like Campbell Graham, I don't know if he owes up Sharks players money or something like that, because they beat that poor guy from pillar to post. There were times where you see him like picking himself up off the ground, like, what have I got myself into here? And that's a representative quality player.
Now that's super interesting, because Bungar was on the show talking about it. All the media guys and girls talk about it. They call him the best defensive center in the game, or one of. And I'm not saying he's not, but when they kept going to him, and I was like, well, old mate Whiten's on the other side as well, which they got as well. But those two guys, for being these, respected defensive players, was like, we really showed them up, at least on this day.
They had Sullivan at one point in the centers when White went to fullback, and we didn't even get to Sullivan because they kept going back to Campbell Graham. And
maybe he's not really completely fit still, or healthy. Like, he was out for a year. Maybe there's a thought there. I don't know. Unless it was just the Ravalawa effect.
And that try where he's literally 2 meters behind the goal line, I think, kind of summed it up.
He's on the green in the golf course.
Yeah, in the second half, there was 1 or 2 tackles he made the final tackle on that we were going for the try line, and he stopped us, just before the try line. So I think we really did a great job of exploiting the fact that he was new there, and that whole combination probably hadn't had a lot of time together. So again, at halftime, they would have regrouped, and they did fix that to an extent. But that try I've never seen anything like that one.
Steve also says the second half is not as bad as it looks. South did not score until we were down to 15. The depth we have is great. Watching the Jets, we have a great mix of experience and youth. Onto the Dogs now with plenty of ex-Sharks. So that's from Steve. Thank you, Steve. And we are going to go over to, oh my gosh. We are going to go to more lovely folks. Hope they're lovely. Roscoe says the first half of footy was one of the best for a few years from the Sharks. We can all agree the foot came off the pedal in the second half. You can put that down to injuries or possible injuries. And also the heat might have influenced it. One thing he doesn't like is the change in the way the refs officiate the game when a team gets ahead. You find the underperforming team gets a few sympathy calls. One good example is Ronnie getting pulled up for taking half a step forward to play the ball, and Rabbitohs players drag his feet through the ruck, only for the Sharks to get penalised next set for it. Being square after they take 3 steps forward to play the ball, leading to the Humphreys try. So that's just an example from Roscoe about how he thinks the underdog kind of gets the rub of the green. Look, there's nothing official there. There's no call for the ref to do that. Like, I think most of you know that, and I can tell you that through my work, I get to hear the refs and the way they handle everything. And when I say refs, I'm talking refs, touch judges, video refs. I get to hear the referee assistants, there's about 10 of them. So it's not just refs' ears, but I hear the whole thing. And there's no talk of that. There's no, hey, let's help these guys out. There's no, I don't know if it's if it's a unconscious thing that they do. I'm not dismissing what you're saying, Roscoe, but I mean, it definitely appears that way. I think we've all seen games where you think, oh, they're down by 30. Oh, here's a penalty for them. Da, 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 da. I don't know. But I understand what you're saying. Appreciate you saying it. Now, here's one you might be able to help me with, Kieran. Mark says, can you tell me why the Sharks allowed South to play Glory Glory when the try was scored at Shark Park? Did that happen?
No, so I think that's a Fox Sports thing. And
it's definitely a Fox Sports thing. Definitely.
Yeah. So when they score a try, like, they'll play a little bit of a clip of it, and they do it for the Raiders too. Like, I've heard
they do it. I'll give you the backstage story. They do it for every club, but every club is a different. No, they do you hear a sound of a shark in the water.
Okay. Yeah.
It's only a short grab. Now, I'm assuming Mark was not at the game, because, I mean, when I'm there,
it wasn't on the speakers. No.
Gotcha. So, Mark, that's just through the Fox sound system. And I can tell you this because I have buttons that activate it when I'm doing certain roles. And every team has a sound. And for whatever reason, the South's one is a couple of bars in music terms, maybe 3 seconds, 4 seconds of Glory Glory. The Cowboys have a dude just going, Yahoo! And that's the one we all love. We all make fun of that one. Not make fun. We all love that when the Cowboys score at work, because we all go, Yahoo! Every team has a sound, and some are more kind of what you would expect than others. I'm pretty sure the Shark is like, it's not even like a Jaws thing. It's just like a swishing in the water or something. I think you'd have to.
Like a like
maybe it is.
Sort of
maybe
like
it is.
Jaws, but it's not.
I should
Jaws.
know. Maybe it is. But there are other ones where, like, maybe the eel is like an eel in the water. It's something we just go, what's that? Like, who's that? You know. But Mark, I think that is what you're referring to. So let us know if that's not what you're referring to. Now, different Steve's been in touch, and he said, Sam, I'll start by saying I told you so. It was not a close game, and we should have put 40 or 50 on them. Are you going to say it'll be a close game next week against the Dogs, who look lost against the Eels? I'll make the call now. A fit Shark should win by at least 20. Now, first of all, Steve, as a long-time listener, you know I don't like the saying I told you so. So please don't say you told me so. You did tell me so. And I wrote back to you and I said, I respect what you told me so. And this is why I said it was going to be close. We're just talking here, Steve. We're not fighting. We're all good. But it is the worst thing you can say to another human being, aside from a few other words, is I told you so. Anyway, if that makes you feel better, I completely am here to be told so. Thank you for being in touch, Steve. You think it'll be another big win against the Dogs? And again, I respect that. I will tell you they have had the best or near best defense for the past year and 4 rounds. So we need to respect that as well. Steve says, I didn't hear any fan mail last week. Did I miss something? I don't know. I think Josh and I might have done it. We did a few episodes, so you might have to go back and listen. But we definitely would have read out a bunch of stuff, including yours, sir. He said Tricky was phenomenal. Kennedy again looked good. Hope he keeps up that form. I have no hesitation in us winning against the, as he calls them, the Chihuahuas. And he's talking by 20 points. Up. See ya. That's from Steve, who is now a regular writer-innerer, which is great. What are your thoughts on Steve's thoughts there, Kieran?
I do remember questions last week because I remember exactly where I was when you guys were doing the mailbag.
Awesome.
But look, I think the Dogs will be a tough test for us. Like, I don't think they're the Bulldogs of last year. I think the last time we played the Dogs beat us from memory. We beat them early on in the year at Cronulla, and then I think they beat us in the second time that we played them. So there's not many teams that have beaten the Sharks recently that aren't, Penrith or Melbourne. So I'm sure they've got this circled in their calendar and they want payback.
All right. 50% says got it done. Second half felt very flat, but dictated the game that was already over after 40 minutes. Felt good to be back. We're now at a point where the Nico Trindle combination is at a point where they can not only run games, but be seen as the best pairing. Now, I wonder if he means best pairing for us or best in the league. Maybe he means just for us, right?
Yeah, well, but the more they grow together, the more they will start to build up that resume, right, of being that combination. I would love to see how many games they've actually played together and then see what that looks like at the end of the season. Because, again, they're definitely our best combination that we've got, but I don't think they're at the level of, say, a Hughes and Munster, for example, right? So they've still got a long way to go to get there. But, now that Cleary and Luai aren't together, maybe Nico and Tricky could put a case into being that top three pairings. I don't know, but there's some good ones out there.
Yeah, for sure. I think that might be all the mail. If it's not, we'll get back to the mail in other episodes. But yeah, just to Steve's point, we are releasing a lot of episodes when we can. So if we don't do the mail traditionally, we usually get to it another part. So just make sure you're subscribed, and if it's not too much of a punish for you guys and girls, listen to all the eps because it helps us out, and also you won't miss things that you may have contributed to. Kieran, we have the Bulldogs this week, as Steve pointed out. It is a 7:35 kickoff on Saturday night. So hopefully it won't be as warm for the players, but who knows? I mean, I'm sure someone knows with the app. You probably know, but
I'm just looking at it now.
Yeah, go for it. Kieran's weather report. Let's go.
It's saying 20 to 23 degrees with a 95% chance of rain.
Whoa.
They think the rain's going to be mostly early on in the day.
Okay.
And then dying out as it gets a bit later, closer to game time.
And that ground literally is in superb shape. So the rain shouldn't affect it too much. I mean, it'll affect everything around it, but the actual ground itself is immaculate. And I'm blessed to be down there sometimes at some weird hours and days where you can see them working on it. And they really, and I'm not a groundskeeper expert here, but they really, really look after that turf. There's a crew there that do it, and it's always looking fantastic. So it should be a fast turf, you would think. Now, we're playing the Dogs, and our team is as what ran out last week. And on the initial bench is Atko, Talakai, Tall Tom returns, and Tuku. And the extended bench is Beryl, Hiroti, Hohepa Puru, Toby Rudolph returns to the extended list, and Billy Burns. So I'm thinking that Rudolph might play Cup this week. We'll see. But at this point, Talakai, as I said, last I heard he was 50-50, and that wasn't a negative. It was more of a positive. So I believe Tall Tom is good to go. I don't think they'd list him there otherwise. And for the Bulldogs, I mean, they are missing some big guns in Matt Burton and also for the Army Kickow. So it's fantastic for the Sharks. Doesn't mean we can take them lightly. But when I look at the halves pairing of Bailey, Hayward, and Toby Sexton, I see our halves as a lot better. I will say this, Toby Sexton kicked the heck out of the ball last week. He had over 1,000 kick meters, dude, in a game. So our back three will be kept busy, and that's quite extraordinary.
Yeah, well, I think Trindle had 360 for comparison, right? I think 365 or something in that era. And the week before that, Nico and Tricky were both in the 300s. So to do 1,000 in a game, that's insane.
So what that tells me also is that, and I've noted it, that we are running the ball a lot on the fifth tackle, like particularly when we're in the opposition 20, we run the ball rather than kick more times than not. I think the Dogs are very kick happy. And also I think Toby would have taken the majority of kicks, obviously, to get that sort of meterage in. So expect more of that this week. I thought their prop in Daniel Saluka Fafita was pretty handy and pretty hard to contain. And Josh Curran's pretty busy as well. Preston's decent. And their bench, I mean, Tupanua, ex-Rooster, is handy. His hands are terrible, but he's handy. And Harry Hayes is a bit of a worker. Then you got Kurt Mann, Curtis Morin. I think that in most avenues here, as Steve, our letter writer, proved before, we're pretty stacked here. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the blowout that he thinks it's going to be. We hope to God, let's bring it on. But this Stephen Crichton's there. He's their captain. He's amazing.
It's also,
right?
Too, mate. It's the Bronson Cherry return.
First return?
Yeah, he didn't play in the game last year at Shark Park. So he's played against the Sharks. I think he played in that one at Homebush, but I think this is his first time back at Shark Park since, 2019. So, he's going to be up for a really big game. He's got a lot of talent, that guy. So it's a shame how things ended with us, but he's going to be absolutely up for it. And so will Connor Tracy, so will Jamin Salmon, who are, ex-Sharks players, right? So there's a few of them in that squad that are going to try and get their numbers back against the club that, maybe didn't want them.
So what, Jamin was like a junior, yeah?
He played lower grades for us, yeah. I think he played up to the Cup.
Bronson played in the Homebush Golden Point loss for us game in round 17 last year. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there'll be a minor spotlight on that. I completely agree with you. He'll be amped.
I think there's only like 3 players that he played with that are still in the team, right, from back then. I think a lot of those guys, it's probably like a Brayley, Will Kennedy, a couple of those guys.
Maybe Ramey. Also, to be fair, and I'm actually a big admirer of what he does on the field, and I still am. I think he'll be dangerous out there. If he's holding any grief against the club, I mean, come on, man. Like, this is a proven instant where you did it. No one forced you to do it.
Our hands are clean for once. So yeah, look, it's just going to be one of those interesting ones to see how he handles that emotion. Because I'm sure there will be something in it for him. Yeah,
I mean, he was, as most of our listeners know, unless you're a very, very new fan, he was the next in line. He was your Stone Street. He was your Stewie Mills. He was your Andrew Eddinghausen. And you know what? He had the talent to back it up, and he still kind of does. He's unfortunately wasted some time there, but the body's pretty fresh. So, we were talking about, would you bring him back? Wouldn't you bring him back? And from a playing point of view, I had no problem with it. I mean, I can see why they didn't, and I'm completely cool with that. But as I said, he's not without talent. He's strong runner of the ball still, and his defense has probably improved over the years. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the Dogs go to him. When I look at their team, and I'm looking for X factors, he's still one of them. But yeah, Stephen Crichton's out there, and can win games on his own. So that's why I don't think it's just going to be a landslide necessarily to us. But I think if we play anything like what we did last week, I think that we'll win for sure. What are you looking for out of this game aside from the 2 points, Kieran? What do you hope to see?
I want to see good defense, and I want to see us, get through this block that we've been in, right? We break the season down into blocks. I think now at this point, we've now got the 2 weeks back-to-back at home, and I think that puts us in a really good position to see where we're going up against a team that has not lost this season. The Bulldogs have got a lot of momentum at the moment. They believe in themselves. So let's see if they're any good. Let's see where we're actually standing. All
right. Sounds good. Kieran, thank you for your time. I know you're a busy dude. Appreciate you. This has been the coffee catch up. It's the flagship as well, I think we're going to call it for now. And you'll hear more from us before the game. I am very confident about that. But Kieran, enjoy your day. Enjoy your week. If we don't talk to you before game day, and game day is Saturday, 7:35 p.m. against the Bulldogs. And if you want to drop us a line, you know how to do it. It's up there on the screen. If you're watching, if you're listening, of course, sharkcastpod@gmail.com. You can DM us at sharkcastpod. When I say up on the screen, if you're not watching on the YouTube, for a lot of these episodes, you can. Not all of them, but a lot of them you can. You can see Kieran and I just jamming here. And I'm pretty hopeful we're going to do a live stream after the game, Kieran. Not sure if you're going to be hanging around or not. We'll see how you're going. But stay tuned for that one, but I'm reasonably sure we'll be doing a live stream. So that'll be fun. Hopefully we're all in good mood, happy mood, positive mood, and talking about 20 plus wins, because that'd be great for the for and against, great for the confidence. And until we speak to everyone, let's play the song, Kieran, because we can. We love a win here on SharkCast Pod, and we will be hearing from us soon. Thanks for your time, Kieran. Thanks for listening and watching, everyone. This is SharkCast Pod. Up Cronulla.